why truth is a luxury no ruler can afford, and why, in the corridors of influence, it is the story that shapes reality, not the facts themselves. The world does not bend to honesty. It bends to conviction, to narrative, to the carefully constructed lens through which others see themselves reflected. A leader who clings to truth as a shield will find it brittle, shattered by ambition, desire, fear. Those who survive, who dominate, understand that the story people believe is the true currency of power. Facts may exist, yet they are inert until molded, interpreted, and sold. They are weapons only when sharpened into perception. Every interaction is a battlefield of attention. Every contract, every handshake, every conversation is theater. Observe how the timid cling to correctness, how the proud brandish honesty as armor. They do not see that armor weighs them down, slows them in the maneuvers of influence. The shrewd do not require the world to acknowledge what is. They demand the world to witness what they intend it to see. And in that vision, loyalty forms, fear manifests, alliances crystallize. Reality is never objective. It is a reflection of the story you weave and the story you sustain. Do not mistake this for cynicism. It is not hatred of truth, but an acknowledgement of its irrelevance to those who act. The mind of man is a landscape of assumptions, hopes, and prejudices. He will follow the narrative that gratifies his fears and desires before any factual account. A business that survives does so not because it is correct, but because it convinces. Conviction is the engine, narrative is the road, perception is the horizon. Those who master it are not merely traders of goods or services. They are sculptors of belief, architects of consent. Observe how betrayal often flows from truth, how loyalty fractures when facts fail to align with desire. People do not resist lies, they resist stories that fail to honor their illusions. To lead is to offer illusions that serve ambition without exposing fragility. In the marketplace, as in the palace, appearances outweigh substance. A promise well articulated carries more weight than a factually superior alternative. Every leader must calculate when to reveal, when to conceal, when to spin the tale that will be remembered rather than the truth that will be ignored. Power is exercised in the shadows between fact and perception. Every decision is a negotiation of belief. Every contract, a pact between what is and what is believed to be. The clever understand that influence requires not compliance with reality, but alignment with the stories people cling to. Control is not enforced by logic, but by the impression that one possesses clarity and foresight. Truth is cumbersome. It exposes, it restrains, it forces consistency where flexibility is needed. Narrative liberates, weaponizes, consolidates authority. And so the successful actor in business or in any arena of power measures every word, every gesture, every disclosure against its capacity to reinforce the story, not the facts. They understand the human appetite for certainty, for meaning, for a narrative that situates them as protagonists rather than pawns. They cultivate trust not by revealing the mechanics of their operation, but by offering a story that is easier to believe than to question. The currency of influence is always belief, never truth. Those who cannot accept this, who cling to honesty as if it were a sword, will find themselves outmaneuvered by those who trade in conviction. The world bends to the story told, and those who tell it most convincingly shape the horizon. In the theater of business, truth is irrelevant. Only the story that people believe matters, for it dictates behavior, allegiance, and fear, the true engines of power. To master influence, one must become invisible within the narrative, guiding perception while hiding the machinery. Control is quiet, precise, remorseless, and it is exercised in the spaces where truth has no dominion, only belief. Every empire of commerce is built upon the quiet manipulation of perception. Deals are struck not with the blunt hammer of truth, but with the subtle brush of narrative. Each presentation, each meeting, each advertisement is a battlefield where stories clash and only the most persuasive survive. The victor is not he who holds the fact, but he who convinces others that his version is the inevitable reality. Observe the language of power. It does not announce accuracy. It insinuates inevitability. Those who succeed are fluent in implication, in suggestion, in crafting reality, without ever exposing the raw mechanics that underpin it. Loyalty is purchased with stories, not promises. People are drawn to narratives that affirm their identity, that rationalize their choices, that flatter their fears and aspirations. The leader who understands this does not burden his audience with truth. He dresses truth in the garb of their expectations. He shapes outcomes by guiding perception, allowing others to believe they act freely while every step has been anticipated, every reaction accounted for. Fear, hope, desire, they are levers, as precise and necessary as any contract or financial instrument. Master them, and you move the world without resistance. In the theater of influence, betrayal is predictable. It arises not from malice alone, but from misalignment between story and belief. When the narrative falters, when the account cannot justify the actions, loyalty dissolves. This is the eternal law. Men cling to the story that comforts or empowers them. When it fails, they abandon both the teller and the tale. The prudent leader never relies solely on devotion to truth. He ensures that the story persists even when the facts shift. To survive, one must be both playwright and actor, both visible and invisible, crafting a reality that others willingly inhabit. Observe the machinery of human attention. Facts are inert until ignited by narrative. A spreadsheet, a report, a financial statement, these are inert objects, meaningless in themselves. Meaning is conferred only by the story that interprets them. The same data can signal prosperity or disaster, virtue or vice, depending on the framing. Influence is therefore exercised in the spaces between fact and interpretation. Those who control these spaces control the outcome. Every communication becomes a strategic choice: what to reveal, what to omit, what to emphasize, and what to let the imagination supply. Power, then, is the art of expectation. People act upon what they believe will happen, not what actually will. A leader aware of this does not demand obedience through reason. He guides belief through narrative. Fear is sculpted, trust is choreographed, ambition is steered, all with stories that resonate with the internal logic of those he leads. The clever understand that the mind's allegiance is won not through evidence but through consistency, plausibility, and the relentless reinforcement of the chosen narrative. Truth is optional, belief is mandatory. In business, as in statecraft, appearance is the bridge between intention and action. A company may be weak yet appear invincible. A leader may hesitate yet inspire confidence. These illusions are not errors, they are instruments. Reality submits to perception long before it conforms to fact. To master influence is to manipulate the lens through which others view themselves and their choices, guiding them with subtlety, precision, and patience. The storyteller is the unseen hand that arranges loyalty, fear, and desire, and in that arrangement, power becomes inevitable. Every negotiation, every alliance, every merger is a contest of narrative control. Those who cling to the literal will falter. Those who shape belief will dominate. In the silence between words, in the implication of a glance, in the cadence of a message, control is exercised. Facts may exist, but they are meaningless until enmeshed in the story. The leader who forgets this binds himself to reality's fickle whims. The one who remembers it molds reality itself. Influence, therefore, is the careful cultivation of what others accept as inevitable, the steady construction of belief that guides action without confrontation. And so, truth is merely a tool, rarely wielded directly, often concealed, always subordinate. The modern arena, like the courts of kings long past, is won not by disclosure, but by persuasion, not by accuracy, but by the compelling force of story. Those who recognize this are not dishonest. They are alive to the rules that govern the human heart. The story that people believe is the architecture of authority. It dictates alliances, channels ambition, and sows fear. Control is exercised silently, persistently, invisibly, in the spaces where fact cedes to belief, where perception becomes reality, and where the will of one who understands these laws can shape the behavior of many. The narrative, once accepted, becomes self-sustaining. People defend it, propagate it, internalize it, often without conscious awareness. The leader who understands this need not coerce. He need only maintain the story, adjusting its threads with precision, letting it grow organically while he guides its evolution. Opposition becomes irrelevant when belief itself has been aligned with intent. The world does not follow truth, it follows conviction. The ruler, the executive, the strategist, he who commands story, commands action, and in this mastery, truth is but a whisper, secondary to the relentless, unyielding force of belief. Deception is not a flaw, it is a strategy. Every enterprise, every negotiation, every human interaction unfolds along lines invisible to those untrained in the architecture of belief. To rely on truth alone is to walk blind across a battlefield of minds, where perception is the terrain and conviction is the weapon. The mind of man is not a ledger of facts. It is a mirror of desires, insecurities, and fears. Those who survive in this arena do not seek to illuminate reality. They seek to bend it, shape it, and cloak it in a narrative that others will willingly inhabit. Consider how influence is exercised in silence. The glance, the pause, the carefully chosen word, these are the instruments of power, often more decisive than overt declarations. People will defend a narrative long after they would question a fact. They will embrace a story that flatters their ego, justifies their choices, or assuages their dread. The leader who understands this does not bombard the world with truth. He insinuates it, dresses it in expectation, frames it within desire. Truth is too rigid, too precise, too unforgiving. Narrative is fluid, adaptive, and deadly effective. Fear is as manipulable as loyalty. Both are born of perception. A well-timed suggestion can inspire devotion. A subtle omission can provoke anxiety. People act not upon reality, but upon what they believe to be real. To govern perception is to govern action. Every communication, every decision, every gesture is an opportunity to align belief with intent. Those who fail to perceive this act as though the world responds to morality, to logic, to honesty, and they are devoured. Those who perceive it act like sculptors, shaping raw material into a form that commands obedience and orchestrates behavior. Even resistance is predictable, for it too is shaped by story. The disbeliever, the skeptic, the critic, they all react to narratives as they understand them. They defend their version of reality, often unaware that the story they cling to is itself a construct. The leader who masters perception anticipates these reactions, steers them subtly, and transforms opposition into reinforcement. Every challenge becomes an instrument, every doubt a lever, every hesitation an opportunity to strengthen the narrative's grip. Power is never exercised openly. It is exercised in the spaces between thought and action, in the silent alignment of belief with purpose. Loyalty is conditional, malleable, and contingent upon narrative. People are not loyal to truth, they are loyal to the story that protects their position, elevates their sense of importance, or shields them from fear. To maintain influence, the architect of perception must ensure that the story continues to serve these needs, even as circumstances shift. Transparency is dangerous, subtlety is essential. Facts may betray, evidence may fail, but a narrative can endure, adapt, and thrive where truth falters. Those who grasp this understand that the heart of leadership lies not in revelation, but in construction, building realities that others accept without question. Control is therefore invisible, yet absolute. It is measured not by force, but by the consistency with which belief is maintained. The world bends to perception long before it conforms to reality. In business, as in politics, the one who shapes the story shapes the outcome. Strategy is not the application of resources or execution of plans alone. It is the orchestration of expectation, the calibration of belief, the precise guidance of attention. Every impression is a stroke in the larger composition, every interaction a note in the symphony of influence. And so, the world rewards those who understand the pliancy of the mind, the hunger for narrative, the malleability of perception. Truth is not irrelevant because it does not exist. It is irrelevant because it is inert. Belief moves mountains, drives commerce, inspires loyalty, incites fear, and compels action. To master influence is to master the story, to engineer conviction with surgical precision, and to operate where others are blind. In the space between fact and understanding, between reality and the narrative that humans cannot resist believing. The shrewd do not argue, they orchestrate. They do not persuade, they present a reality that aligns with desire. They do not expose, they insinuate. In this theater, truth is a servant, never a master, and the one who commands the story commands the stage, the audience, the outcome. This is the essence of power, the invisible architecture of influence, the unspoken law that governs every arena where men transact, contend, and aspire. Ambition is inseparable from narrative. The desires that drive men, the fears that bind them, the loyalties they offer, all are guided less by reality than by the stories they are told to inhabit. A leader who grasps this does not wait for circumstances to align with truth. He aligns circumstances with perception. Every promise, every statement, every silence is measured not by its accuracy, but by its capacity to reinforce belief, to shape expectation, to orchestrate action. The mind will follow the story that convinces it of inevitability, and in that obedience lies control. Betrayal is predictable when the story falters. Those who cling to truth as if it were a shield discover too late that loyalty is conditional upon coherence, plausibility, and the alignment of perception with desire. Men abandon truth for comfort, for reassurance, for a story that reconciles their fears with their ambition. The prudent leader anticipates this, constructs narratives that are resilient to doubt, and adapts the tale as the world shifts, ensuring that allegiance persists even when facts diverge. To survive is to manage expectation, to sculpt belief, to wield story as both sword and shield. Manipulation is not cruelty, it is craft. Every interaction is a chessboard where attention, desire, and fear are pieces to be positioned, sacrificed, or advanced. Words are more lethal than contracts, impressions more decisive than evidence. The one who masters perception shapes the moves of others before they realize the game is underway. People will act against their own interest if convinced by story. They will defend illusions they know to be false because the narrative satisfies deeper instincts. Influence is exercised invisibly, yet its effects are absolute, for human action is never dictated by truth but by conviction. Control thrives in ambiguity. Facts alone cannot compel, they must be interpreted. Silence can command as effectively as declaration, and omission can manipulate more effectively than disclosure. The leader navigates these shadows, guiding belief without exposing the mechanisms of influence. Reputation, credibility, and perception are weapons sharper than legislation, strategy, or brute force. Those who underestimate the power of story over substance are ensnared in the rigidity of truth. Those who wield narrative with precision command the loyalty, fear, and obedience that constitute real authority. In commerce, in politics, in any arena where ambition collides, the rules are consistent. People act on what they believe, not what is. The world rewards those who craft reality, not those who report it. Every negotiation is a performance. Every alliance is a play of expectation. Every message is a vector of belief. Truth is a secondary instrument, useful only to the extent that it reinforces the story. Conviction is the only force capable of shaping action, and it is maintained by repetition, consistency, and the subtle orchestration of perception. Even opposition is malleable. Skepticism, criticism, dissent, these forces can be redirected, absorbed, or neutralized through narrative. A carefully framed story can convert resistance into compliance, suspicion into allegiance, doubt into advocacy. Influence is exercised not by coercion, but by calibration, by shaping the lens through which others interpret their world. Power resides in these invisible adjustments, in the alignment of thought with expectation, in the construction of belief that guides behavior without confrontation. Thus, the truth of any enterprise is subordinate to the perception it projects. The leader who survives and thrives does not rely on honesty. He relies on the narrative that compels others to act as he intends. Facts are tools, stories are weapons. The mind responds to story because it craves coherence, certainty, and purpose. Reality conforms reluctantly. Belief submits willingly. To command is to craft, to sustain, and to adapt the narrative that others accept as inevitable. In this mastery, influence becomes inexorable, and the distinction between fact and fiction dissolves in the architecture of power. The skilled architect of perception understands that the human heart is a landscape of illusions, each shaped by expectation and desire. People will defend what is convenient to believe, embrace what gratifies, and act upon what satisfies instinct more than intellect. Leadership, therefore, is the construction of realities that satisfy these instincts, a deliberate manipulation of story to generate action, allegiance, and fear. Truth is neither guide nor restraint. It is merely one element within a broader tapestry of narrative, strategically applied, carefully concealed, and endlessly adapted to maintain control. Every alliance is fragile, every loyalty conditional, every ambition susceptible to erosion. The prudent leader understands that no relationship is sacred, no contract inviolate, and no reputation unassailable. All are contingent upon the story that underpins them. People will follow what comforts their ego, what reassures their fears, what amplifies their sense of importance. They will betray when the narrative falters, when perception no longer aligns with desire. To anticipate this is not paranoia, it is realism. To prepare for it is not cynicism, it is survival. Trust is cultivated not through transparency, but through consistency. A narrative repeated, reinforced, and embodied becomes truth in the minds of others, regardless of the underlying reality. The clever leader deploys information selectively, revealing only what serves the story, omitting what could fracture belief, and framing events to reinforce the perception of control and inevitability. Reality itself becomes pliable in the hands of the one who understands that humans act not on facts, but on what they are convinced to accept as real. Deception is structural, not incidental. It is woven into strategy as naturally as breath into a body. Every statement, every gesture, every decision is calculated for its effect on belief. The most effective leaders operate invisibly within the narrative, guiding action by shaping perception while leaving the machinery of manipulation concealed. People do not resist what they believe. They resist only what conflicts with their convictions. To master influence is to guide those convictions with precision, to engineer the illusion that aligns with ambition, and to maintain it through meticulous control of information and impression. Fear is an instrument as necessary as ambition. It compels, restrains, and clarifies action. The perception of threat can unify or divide, motivate or paralyze, depending on how it is framed. The leader who wields narrative understands how to calibrate fear, how to present challenges that sharpen loyalty and focus, and how to remove threats without exposing vulnerability. The world responds not to danger itself, but to the perception of danger, and those who master that perception move first, strike decisively, and secure obedience before the untrained even comprehend the conflict. Reputation is the currency of influence. It is earned not through virtue, but through the consistency of story, through the projection of competence, foresight, and inevitability. Facts may contradict perception, but perception dictates action. A leader's strength lies in controlling how he is seen, in ensuring that every interaction reinforces the narrative, and in anticipating how each event will be interpreted by others. Influence is maintained not by revealing reality, but by sustaining belief in the story that motivates, reassures, and governs behavior. Every decision, every initiative, every public display is a calculated signal. The observer interprets not the action itself, but the story it suggests. Strategic silence, deliberate omission, and subtle implication are often more potent than overt declaration. The shrewd leader operates in these interstices, shaping understanding, guiding expectation, and constraining opposition without confrontation. Reality conforms reluctantly, but belief obeys willingly. Those who grasp this wield power with elegance, precision, and inevitability. Even opposition can be harnessed, converted, or neutralized through narrative. Criticism, doubt, and resistance are reactions to the story, not to fact. A subtle shift in framing, a timely reinforcement of expectation, a demonstration of inevitability, these are sufficient to redirect dissent. Influence is exercised not by force alone, but by the careful calibration of belief, by the orchestration of perception, and by the relentless alignment of desire with intention. Control is invisible but absolute, executed where truth is subordinate to story. Thus, in business as in politics, reality is a servant to narrative. Those who cling to truth as a shield discover that loyalty, action, and obedience follow conviction, not fact. Facts may inform, but they do not compel. Story compels, persuades, and sustains. Influence is earned not through disclosure, but through construction, not through honesty, but through strategic alignment of belief with intent. The world bends to the story people believe, and the one who crafts that story commands behavior, shapes destiny, and achieves authority beyond the reach of mere truth. Every negotiation is a contest of perception, where the strongest weapon is not the contract itself, but the story that frames it. People sign not only with their hands, but with their beliefs, their egos, their fears. A deal is never about fairness. It is about conviction. Those who wield narrative well understand that compliance follows belief, not legality. They bend action before consent is explicit, steering choice by shaping expectation, guiding thought, and preempting doubt. In this arena, truth is inert, influence is alive, adaptive, and merciless. Observation is essential. Every hesitation, every question, every expression is data. The leader who perceives the unspoken, who deciphers the unconscious alignment of desire and fear, transforms these moments into leverage. Humans reveal their priorities before they articulate them. The story that will be accepted is already whispered in their actions. The task of the strategist is simply to amplify it, to cloak it in inevitability, and to integrate it into the broader narrative that governs loyalty and obedience. Facts are tools, but perception is the forge in which influence is hardened. Power thrives in ambiguity. Absolute clarity favors the naive and the literal. Ambiguity empowers the manipulator. When reality is uncertain, the mind seeks coherence, story, and leadership. The leader who exploits this does not merely report events, he crafts the narrative through which events are understood. Every word, every omission, every gesture reinforces the story, channels expectation, and constrains choice. Human action is the product of perception. Reality is malleable, pliable, and subordinate to the narrative that convinces. Fear is an instrument of unparalleled efficacy. It binds, motivates, and directs behavior, but only when calibrated to perception. Too much fear paralyzes, too little fails to mobilize. The master manipulator adjusts the narrative, presenting danger just sufficient to demand action, loyalty, or obedience, yet never enough to provoke rebellion. Hope is wielded similarly, as a mirror to desire, as a promise that aligns interest with intention. Influence is the constant adjustment of these forces, a quiet orchestration of belief that dictates conduct without overt coercion. Reputation is a shield and a spear. It protects by framing expectation. It attacks by shaping perception. A leader may err, may fail, may falter, but if the narrative remains intact, belief persists. Consistency is more vital than correctness. The world rarely prizes truth. It prizes the appearance of competence, inevitability, and foresight. To lead is to maintain the illusion of unassailable authority, to construct a story so persuasive that doubt becomes inconceivable. The mind submits to narrative long before it acknowledges reality. Even dissent is predictable, manageable, and convertible. Opposition arises not from malice alone, but from misalignment between story and expectation. A subtle reframing, a timely revelation, a calculated omission, these can redirect skepticism into allegiance, doubt into advocacy. Influence is exercised in these interstices, in the spaces where belief, desire, and perception intersect. Those who fail to act here are overtaken by the currents of expectation. Those who act with precision steer those currents to their own advantage. Thus, control is the invisible hand that guides action, loyalty, and ambition. Facts matter little. Story governs everything. Humans follow what they believe, not what is. The leader who grasps this does not impose truth, but crafts belief. He does not negotiate facts, but orchestrates perception. He does not rely on loyalty to honesty, but on the consistency, plausibility, and inevitability of narrative. Influence is earned in silence, reinforced in subtlety, and maintained through the meticulous alignment of expectation with desire. The modern arena rewards those who understand this law. Truth is secondary, perception is supreme. The one who masters story commands action. The one who commands action shapes destiny. Facts may exist, but they are powerless until embedded in belief. The leader who navigates this realm with foresight, patience, and precision bends the world to his intent, orchestrating allegiance, fear, and ambition in a theater invisible to those who cling to honesty. Reality yields only to the story that men believe, and mastery of that story is the ultimate expression of power. Ambition thrives on narrative, for desire is always framed by belief. People act not on the brute facts of circumstance, but on the story that aligns with their hopes, fears, and self-image. The leader who understands this constructs realities in which others willingly participate, steering action without force, guiding choice without explicit command. Every conversation, every correspondence, every public statement is an opportunity to shape the lens through which others interpret their world. Facts may inform, but they do not compel. Belief compels, and it is through belief that influence flows. Betrayal is inevitable where story falters. Humans abandon truth when it no longer serves their perception of advantage. A promise, once credible, becomes meaningless if the narrative supporting it wavers. The prudent strategist anticipates this fragility, reinforcing loyalty through story, adjusting details to maintain coherence, and presenting outcomes in a way that validates the expectations of others. Survival depends not on the purity of intention, but on the resilience of narrative. Those who fail to maintain the story are swept aside by those who can. Manipulation is structural, not incidental. It is woven into the fabric of leadership as naturally as vision and strategy. Every decision, every gesture, every omission is designed to influence perception. People reveal their priorities unconsciously through hesitation, emphasis, or choice. The leader who observes and interprets these signals converts them into leverage. Influence is exercised not in open confrontation, but in subtle orchestration, in guiding belief, so that others act according to a plan they feel they chose themselves. Fear is a precise instrument. It channels action, focuses attention, and consolidates loyalty. When properly framed, threats and challenges motivate without provoking rebellion. Hope is similarly wielded, a mirror to ambition that aligns interest with intent. Mastery of influence requires constant calibration, balancing these forces to maintain obedience, mobilize effort, and shape perception. Action follows belief, not reality. Mastery over perception is mastery over outcome. Reputation is a weapon and a shield. It defends by shaping expectation, attacks by influencing perception. Success lies not in avoiding error, but in maintaining the story of competence, inevitability, and foresight. Consistency matters more than fact. Humans value the appearance of authority above the revelation of truth. To lead is to maintain a narrative so compelling that skepticism cannot take root. Reality conforms reluctantly, belief submits willingly. Even opposition can be harnessed. Skepticism and resistance arise from misalignment between narrative and expectation. A timely adjustment, a subtle reframing, or a carefully placed omission can redirect doubt into loyalty, dissent into advocacy. Influence operates in the spaces between action and understanding, in the shadows where perception and desire intersect. Those who fail to act in these spaces are driven by the currents of belief. Those who act deliberately bend those currents to their will. Control is invisible but absolute. Facts matter only insofar as they support story. Humans follow what they believe, not what exists. The effective leader crafts belief with precision, aligning expectation with action, orchestrating perception without exposing manipulation. Influence is quiet, relentless, and unavoidable when applied with skill. Through narrative, the leader guides loyalty, fear, and ambition simultaneously, achieving outcomes that truth alone could never secure. In business and politics alike, reality bends to the story that people accept. Truth is secondary, perception supreme. Those who master story dictate behavior. Those who dictate behavior shape destiny. Facts, inert without belief, are tools wielded by the architect of narrative. The successful leader does not impose reality, he constructs it. He does not rely on honesty, he relies on the inevitability of belief. Influence resides in the subtle orchestration of story, in the silent alignment of desire with expectation, in the unbroken thread that guides thought, action, and allegiance toward a single, inescapable purpose. Every strategy is born in anticipation, every decision measured against the unseen currents of human expectation. The world does not reward preparation alone. It rewards foresight framed as inevitability. The leader who succeeds understands that time is an ally when manipulated, a weapon when deployed with precision. Moments must be chosen, words weighted, and gestures calibrated. Action without calculation is folly. Hesitation without context is weakness. The mind of man is volatile, guided more by perceived necessity than by principle, and to navigate it requires both subtlety and resolve. Ambition is sustained by narrative, but it is disciplined by consequence. One cannot simply declare power. One must arrange the conditions that render it inevitable. Every subordinate, every rival, every observer is an element in the architecture of influence. Align them through expectation, through framing, through controlled revelation, and their movements become predictable. The appearance of inevitability breeds obedience, and obedience is the scaffold upon which authority is built. Those who neglect the cultivation of perception discover that even minor missteps are magnified, alliances fracture, and control dissipates. Manipulation is an exercise in precision, not cruelty. Every omission, every emphasis, every insinuation is calculated for effect. The human mind accepts guidance more readily when it believes the path is chosen freely. Thus, the skillful leader does not coerce openly, but orchestrates subtly, allowing others to feel agency even as their actions conform to a plan they did not perceive. Influence is silent, often invisible, yet its consequences are absolute. Those who underestimate the quiet power of suggestion are invariably outmaneuvered by those who wield it consciously. Loyalty is a commodity to be managed, never assumed. It is earned not through virtue but through alignment with expectation and desire. Those who understand this maintain allegiance through narrative continuity, framing events in a manner that validates self-interest, justifies decisions, and reinforces confidence. Fear and hope are levers that, when applied judiciously, enhance loyalty and constrain deviation. To miscalculate these forces is to invite treachery. To master them is to secure obedience without overt domination. Conflict, like perception, is an instrument. Rivals are neutralized not only by confrontation, but by preemption through reputation, timing, and narrative framing. One must observe the smallest signs of doubt, hesitation, or overconfidence, and act to exploit them. Advantage accrues to the one who recognizes the unseen, anticipates reaction, and aligns action with expectation. The battlefield is as much in the mind as it is in the field. Victory often comes without open struggle, achieved by shaping belief before force is applied. Even the passage of time is subordinate to perception. The prudent leader uses delay to strengthen expectation, accelerates revelation to consolidate advantage, and arranges events so that others perceive inevitability where only careful orchestration exists. In the mind of the observer, control appears effortless. In reality, it is the product of calculation, patience, and relentless attention to the architecture of belief. Power is preserved by those who manage the perception of inevitability, not by those who rely solely upon truth or force. Thus, influence is exercised in the quiet spaces between knowledge and assumption. Every interaction, whether public or private, shapes expectation, molds perception, and guides action. Facts alone are inert. Only the belief they inspire carries consequence. A leader who comprehends this operates not on morality, but on necessity, not on disclosure, but on construction, not on truth, but on the architecture of conviction. To lead effectively is to become the unseen hand within the story, directing desire, managing fear, and aligning ambition with purpose in a manner that appears natural, inevitable, and unquestionable. Every action must be measured against the web of consequences it will generate. The prudent leader does not act impulsively, for the human mind is quick to interpret, slow to forgive, and swift to punish inconsistency. Each choice is a signal, each word a vector of expectation, each gesture a calculation of influence. To navigate the currents of ambition and loyalty, one must understand that perception often outweighs reality, and the appearance of wisdom is more effective than its substance. Rivalry is constant, and it is rarely overt. Enemies are forged in silence, in the spaces where doubt festers, where expectation is misaligned, and where perception is left unmanaged. The skillful leader observes these fractures, exploits them subtly, and ensures that opposition collapses before it has the chance to mobilize. The art of preemption lies not in brute force, but in guiding belief, shaping narrative, and arranging circumstances so that rivals act in predictable patterns, their choices aligning with the orchestrator's intent. Ambition itself must be managed with care. Those who overreach without establishing the story that justifies their rise invite envy, fear, and sabotage. The prudent architect of power advances incrementally, framing each gain as inevitable, each success as a natural outcome of skill and foresight. By controlling narrative, one ensures that allies interpret progress as evidence of competence, while adversaries perceive inevitability rather than threat. Timing, therefore, is as vital as strength. Perception is as critical as action. Manipulation is not merely tactical, it is structural. The leader embeds influence into the fabric of interaction, guiding belief without overt interference. Every message is curated, every disclosure weighted, every omission intentional. Subordinates, partners, and observers alike are steered by the story they are presented, their actions aligning with intention before they perceive it. Influence is exercised quietly, invisibly, yet its reach is absolute. Those who ignore this subtlety discover that control is not seized. It is granted by those who believe they act voluntarily. Fear and hope are instruments of enduring potency. Fear restrains, motivates, and sharpens attention. Hope inspires, persuades, and consolidates loyalty. The master calibrates both, ensuring that neither dominates excessively, that both reinforce the desired behavior. The world acts not on facts, but on anticipation. Men respond to the projected consequences of action as much as to action itself. Influence is therefore maintained through careful modulation of belief, a deliberate shaping of expectation that guides conduct and maintains allegiance. Loyalty, like power, is contingent. It thrives where narrative is consistent, plausible, and aligned with self-interest. The leader who mismanages narrative invites betrayal. The one who sustains it secures obedience without coercion. Humans are rarely loyal to principle alone. They are loyal to the story that validates their choices, satisfies ambition, and mitigates fear. To manage loyalty is to manage perception, and to manage perception is to command action. Even the passage of events must be orchestrated to reinforce narrative. Timing, sequencing, and revelation are all tools by which belief is shaped. A crisis may be leveraged to consolidate authority. An opportunity may be framed to highlight inevitability. A setback may be interpreted as a test of foresight. The adept leader ensures that perception continuously favors the narrative that supports control, allowing reality itself to be bent to expectation without overt confrontation. Power, therefore, resides not in truth, nor in force alone, but in the meticulous architecture of belief. Every choice, every interaction, every appearance is an instrument. Influence is exercised in silence, in subtlety, and in the space where perception dictates action. The world bends to the story that men accept. The one who constructs that story commands behavior, shapes loyalty, and dictates destiny. Truth is subordinate, narrative is sovereign, and those who master it operate with inevitability, precision, and remorseless calculation. Every victory is contingent upon perception. The triumph of a plan is rarely determined by its intrinsic merit, but by how convincingly it has been framed. Allies interpret outcomes through the lens of expectation. Rivals judge moves according to the story they have constructed in their own minds. The leader who understands this does not rely solely on capability or force. He controls the narrative before action is taken, ensuring that every response aligns with his intent. Reality itself becomes subordinate to the orchestration of belief. Observation is the foundation of strategy. Every glance, every hesitation, every question is information. Humans betray their priorities in subtle ways, revealing what they value, fear, and desire. The astute leader deciphers these signals, translating them into leverage, aligning perception with advantage. Influence is not imposed by overt control, but exercised invisibly, guiding action by shaping expectation, steering behavior through carefully curated impressions. Facts remain inert until they are interpreted. Belief is the engine of consequence. Rivalry and betrayal are predictable forces. Humans are rarely loyal to principle. They are loyal to the story that serves their self-interest. The slightest misalignment between narrative and desire is sufficient to provoke deviation, subversion, or treachery. The prudent strategist anticipates these fissures, reinforces loyalty through story, and preempts rebellion by ensuring that perception aligns with intention. Survival depends not on truth, but on the consistency and plausibility of narrative. Those who fail to control belief are swept aside by those who do. Ambition is both an ally and a threat. The desires that drive men can be harnessed or redirected through careful framing. Success is presented as inevitable, progress as the natural consequence of foresight, and opportunity as a reflection of competence. By shaping interpretation, the leader converts individual aspiration into collective action, aligning desire with strategy, hope with obedience. The perception of inevitability ensures compliance, while unframed ambition can foster chaos. Manipulation is an instrument of structure, not randomness. Every omission, emphasis, and insinuation serves a purpose. The skilled leader embeds influence into the very fabric of interaction, allowing others to act as if freely while their choices are guided. Every communication becomes a vector of perception, every decision a subtle reinforcement of narrative. Influence is exercised in silence, invisibly, yet its effects are absolute. Those unaware of these dynamics are subject to them. Those who recognize them wield them with precision. Fear and hope are levers of enduring potency. Fear restrains, concentrates attention, and motivates action. Hope inspires, consolidates loyalty, and directs ambition. The effective leader calibrates both, applying each in proportion to circumstance, shaping belief without overt coercion. Human action is dictated more by anticipation than by fact. Consequence is governed by expectation. Influence, therefore, is maintained by controlling perception, not by revealing truth. Control resides in subtlety, timing, and framing. Reality alone is insufficient to secure obedience. Perception must be sculpted. Every interaction, every disclosure, every silence is an instrument. Reputation is reinforced, not by truth, but by the consistent projection of competence, inevitability, and foresight. Even dissent can be managed, converted, or neutralized by narrative adjustments. The world yields to the story that is believed. The one who constructs it commands behavior, shapes loyalty, and dictates outcomes with precision. Every move must be calculated against the silent forces that govern human behavior. Ambition, fear, envy, hope. These are constants, predictable in their influence if one observes closely. The leader who neglects them trusts only in circumstance and chance, and is quickly overtaken. One must anticipate desire, understand its manifestations, and manipulate the story so that action aligns with intention. Influence is not imposed. It is cultivated, nurtured, and maintained through perception, subtly guiding behavior without confrontation. Alliances are fragile constructs, held together less by truth than by the stories that justify cooperation. Men cooperate when the narrative serves their self-interest, when it validates their choices, and when it reassures their fears. Any deviation in narrative coherence weakens bonds. Any inconsistency invites defection. The prudent leader observes these dependencies, reinforcing alignment through framing, emphasizing inevitability, and arranging circumstances so that loyalty appears natural and rational, even as it is carefully orchestrated. Rivalry must be anticipated, not merely reacted to. Those who oppose are often blind to the structures that govern perception. They respond to narrative, not fact. The master of influence exploits these blind spots, steering rivals' expectations and guiding their choices before they realize the game has begun. Conflict is as much mental as material. Victory is secured not only by strength, but by shaping belief, anticipating reaction, and controlling interpretation. Ambition itself can be harnessed or misdirected. People act not only in pursuit of self-interest, but in alignment with the story that frames opportunity and consequence. By presenting success as inevitable, framing progress as natural, and highlighting competence as foresight, the strategist channels ambition into obedience. Hope and fear, desire and expectation are the instruments by which action is orchestrated. The mind will pursue the path that appears inevitable. It will resist only when narrative and interest are misaligned. Manipulation is not improvisation, it is architecture. Every disclosure, every omission, every gesture is deliberate. Influence is embedded in the structure of interaction, guiding belief while preserving the illusion of autonomy. Humans act more readily when they feel their choices are their own, even as the options presented are shaped by calculation. The skilled leader exerts control invisibly, allowing the world to move according to intention while leaving observers unaware of the orchestration behind every movement. Reputation is an indispensable weapon. It is less concerned with truth than with perception of competence, inevitability, and foresight. A failure may be tolerated if narrative is maintained. Success is amplified if story reinforces belief. Humans follow the projected narrative more than they follow facts. The leader who understands this cultivates perception deliberately, shaping appearances, guiding interpretation, and ensuring that every action aligns with the story that governs expectation. Even dissent is manageable. Criticism, skepticism, and opposition emerge from the misalignment of story and perception. Subtle reframing, selective revelation, and calibrated guidance can redirect doubt into loyalty, opposition into compliance. Influence is exercised not in overt confrontation, but in the invisible architecture of belief, where perception dictates action. Those who ignore this principle are controlled by forces they do not recognize. Those who master it control the currents of human behavior with precision. Thus, in all arenas, commerce, politics, and human affairs, the world bends not to truth, but to the story that men believe. Facts remain inert without interpretation. Action follows belief. The leader who commands narrative commands behavior, loyalty, and destiny. Power resides not in disclosure, but in construction, not in honesty, but in the orchestration of perception. Every choice, every gesture, every word is an instrument in the symphony of influence, and those who master it act with inevitability, foresight, and the remorseless precision of true authority. And so, the final truth reveals itself. Power is neither moral nor just. It is perception made manifest. The world is indifferent to honesty, deaf to fact, and blind to reason when belief has been sown, nurtured, and harvested. The one who commands story commands the currents of ambition, the sway of fear, and the allegiance of desire. Every action, every choice, every word is but a thread in the tapestry of influence, and the tapestry is stronger than the fiber that composes it. Reality submits reluctantly, but belief bends willingly. Those who cling to truth as if it were a shield are easily dismantled. Their enemies exploit every inconsistency, every hesitation, every whisper of doubt. They mistake morality for power, clarity for authority, and in doing so, they surrender the very instrument that could have secured dominion, the alignment of perception with intent. The master, by contrast, conceals calculation beneath calm, executes with precision beneath apparent spontaneity, and bends loyalty, fear, and hope to the story he sustains. The world obeys the narrative, not the fact. Even betrayal is an instrument. The clever leader anticipates it, integrates it into strategy, and uses it to strengthen the story. Rivals may strike, subordinates may waver, allies may doubt, but each reaction can be harnessed, each hesitation predicted, each act of defection transformed into reinforcement of inevitability. Nothing is wasted. Every outcome is a lever. Power is exercised not through the elimination of unpredictability, but through the orchestration of it, converting human weakness into advantage, turning the fragility of trust into the architecture of authority. Time itself becomes subordinate to story. Events are sequenced, revelations timed, impressions curated so that perception advances in step with intention. A crisis may consolidate power, a failure may illuminate foresight, a rumor may cement reputation. The leader does not merely react to circumstance, he shapes it, frames it, and ensures that others interpret it in a manner that serves narrative continuity. In this, control is absolute, silent, and unassailable. The eye sees only the outcome, the mind perceives inevitability, the heart obeys. In the end, influence is the invisible empire. Facts exist but do not compel. Story reigns, and belief is its army. To lead is to construct a reality that others inhabit willingly, to orchestrate expectations so flawlessly that obedience appears natural, and to operate where truth alone has no dominion. The world does not honor honesty, it honors conviction. It does not submit to clarity, it submits to inevitability. The one who masters narrative controls action. The one who controls action shapes destiny. Every gesture, every word, every silence is an instrument of authority. Loyalty is earned not by virtue, but by plausibility. Fear is wielded not by threat, but by framing. Ambition is guided not by promise, but by expectation. Those who understand these laws navigate human affairs as the sculptor navigates marble. Every strike deliberate, every omission purposeful, every curve aligned with the ultimate design. In their hands, perception becomes power, and power becomes permanence. And so, the final calculation is simple yet inexorable. Truth is irrelevant, reality is secondary, and the world bends to the story that people believe. The ruler, the strategist, the architect of perception, he who constructs narrative with precision, patience, and remorseless clarity, commands not only the actions of men, but the very flow of events. In the theater of influence, he is both playwright and conductor, invisible yet omnipresent, shaping allegiance, guiding fear, and directing ambition with inevitability. In this mastery lies the ultimate authority, the power to bend perception, to align desire with intention, to orchestrate action without force, and to render reality itself subordinate to the narrative sustained. To lead is not to disclose, it is to construct, not to convince. It is to make inevitable, not to be honest. It is to be indispensable. Those who perceive this law of influence move unseen yet omnipotent, silent yet decisive, calm yet remorseless, and in the story that others cannot resist believing, they endure unchallenged, unquestioned, and absolute.